The allure of a perpetual summer, an escape from the capricious British weather, was a powerful draw in the latter half of the 20th century. This desire fueled the development of innovative, all-weather leisure resorts, architectural marvels designed to encapsulate entertainment and recreation within controlled, comfortable environments. Summerland, which dramatically opened its doors in Douglas on the Isle of Man in 1971, was heralded as a pinnacle of this vision. It was more than just a building. It was a futuristic concept, a vast, climate-controlled indoor entertainment city, enclosed beneath an expansive, translucent dome. It promised holidaymakers an endless summer, complete with subtropical gardens, swimming pools, arcades, vibrant restaurants, bustling bars, and dedicated spaces for live performances. However, this ambitious dream of carefree leisure would, on the evening of August 2nd, 1973, devolve into a terrifying and deadly nightmare as fire transformed this futuristic haven into an inescapable inferno, ultimately claiming 50 lives and leaving scores injured in one of the most tragic and consequential fires in modern British peacetime history. The Summerland project was a bold statement, a multi-million-pound investment aimed squarely at reinvigorating the Isle of Man's vital tourism industry and positioning it as a forward-thinking destination. Its architectural ambition was immediately apparent. The complex occupied a commanding position, built directly into a steep cliff face overlooking the Douglas Bay, with its most distinctive feature being an enormous, gently curving facade and roof. This transparent shell, covering an area equivalent to several football pitches and rising to a significant height, was constructed primarily from a material known as auroglass, a trade name for polymethyl methacrylate, or acrylic sheeting. This choice was driven by auroglass's perceived benefits: its lightweight compared to glass, its transparency allowing for a sun-drenched interior, and its supposed durability against the harsh coastal weather. It lent the building a strikingly modern, almost space-age aesthetic. Internally, Summerland was a labyrinthine, multi-level concrete structure designed with vast open-plan areas. 6 distinct levels were interconnected by numerous staircases and walkways, housing a diverse array of attractions, including a children's play area, a roller skating rink, and dance floors, all designed to cater to families and holidaymakers of all ages. On that fateful August evening, an estimated 3,000 people, a mix of tourists and locals, were inside, immersed in the lively holiday atmosphere, utterly unaware of the impending catastrophe. The genesis of the fire was tragically mundane, rooted in a moment of youthful carelessness. Reports indicate it began in a small, disused plastic kiosk, originally intended for selling refreshments, located adjacent to a miniature golf course on an outdoor terrace area, somewhat separate from the main sealed dome. A group of young boys reportedly smoking in or near this kiosk are believed to have unintentionally ignited combustible materials within it. While this initial ignition point was relatively small and crucially outside the main building envelope, the kiosk itself was constructed from flammable plastic and timber. These materials burned readily, and the flames, fanned by a gentle breeze, soon impinged upon the lower sections of Summerland's vast auroglass facade. This was the critical juncture where a manageable, localized fire transitioned into an uncontrollable disaster. The acrylic sheets of auroglass, instead of acting as a barrier to the flames or charring slowly, reacted with terrifying speed. They ignited almost instantly upon contact with the fire from the kiosk. Witnesses, both inside and outside the complex, described a horrifying spectacle. The auroglass didn't just burn, it seemed to melt and flow like flaming liquid. Sheets of flame rapidly ascended the exterior of the building, as if climbing a ladder of highly flammable material. Burning, molten droplets of the plastic rained down, igniting anything combustible they landed upon, spreading the fire both outwards and creating new ignition points. The fire then breached the building's interior with alarming ease, likely through the now failed auroglass panels, ventilation openings, or other gaps in the structure. Once inside, the fire encountered an environment almost perfectly designed for its rapid propagation. The vast, open-plan internal design, which was a key element of Summerland's airy, spacious appeal, now became its deadliest feature, allowing fire, superheated gases, and thick, toxic smoke to spread virtually unchecked across different levels and through large communal areas. The interior was replete with flammable materials, timber cladding, plastic furnishings, decorative hangings, synthetic carpets, and sound-dampening materials applied to walls and ceilings, all contributing to an increasingly intense fire load. Compounding this, the building was critically deficient in fire compartmentation. The use of fire-resistant walls and floors to create barriers that slow or prevent the spread of fire and smoke from one section of a building to another. This absence meant there was little to impede the inferno's relentless advance. The emergency response within Summerland and the subsequent evacuation were marred by critical delays, profound confusion, and systemic failures. The building was equipped with a manual fire alarm system, but it was reportedly not activated for a dangerously long period after the fire had taken hold and become visible. Some accounts suggest that staff, possibly undertrained or lacking clear emergency protocols, hesitated to trigger the alarm. There may have been an underestimation of the fire's severity in its initial stages, or perhaps a reluctance to cause a mass panic over what might have been perceived as a minor external incident. When the alarm was finally sounded, its effectiveness was severely compromised. Many survivors later stated that the alarm was not sufficiently loud or distinctive to cut through the noisy, bustling atmosphere of the leisure complex, with some mistaking it for part of an entertainment feature. Furthermore, the building's internal public address system, a vital tool for conveying clear instructions and directing an orderly evacuation, appears to have failed or was not used effectively in the crucial early minutes. This lack of clear, authoritative direction left thousands of people to react based on incomplete information and growing panic. The ensuing evacuation was chaotic and, for many, a desperate scramble for survival. The building's complex multi-level layout, designed for leisure flow rather than emergency egress, became a deadly trap. While escape routes were present, they were not always clearly signposted, well lit, or easily understood by a public unfamiliar with the building's intricacies. Survivor testimonies revealed that some designated emergency exits were found to be locked, chained, or obstructed by stored items, while others led not to the safety of the outside, but to confusing internal areas or even back into smoke-filled sections of the complex. The rapid and overwhelming spread of thick, acrid black smoke was perhaps the single most significant factor hindering escape. Visibility was reduced to near zero in many areas within minutes, causing intense disorientation and fear. The burning oroglass and other synthetic materials produced a cocktail of toxic gases, including carbon monoxide, making every breath potentially lethal. People became separated from their families in the darkness and choking fumes, desperately trying to find a way out. Many were overcome by smoke inhalation before they could reach safety. The Isle of Man Fire and Rescue Service, along with police, ambulance crews, and volunteers from the community, responded with all available resources once the scale of the emergency became clear. However, they arrived to find a scene of almost unimaginable horror. The Summerland complex was already heavily engulfed in flames, with fire bursting from multiple points of its vast oroglass shell. The sheer size of the building, its complex internal structure, and the intensity of the blaze presented an overwhelming challenge. Firefighters battled with immense courage and determination to gain entry, control the fire's spread, and rescue those trapped inside. They faced extreme heat, dense smoke, the risk of structural collapse, and the harrowing sounds of those still inside. Their efforts were heroic, but the fire had gained too much of a hold too quickly, fueled by the building's own materials. The rescue operation continued for many hours, a grim and dangerous task in an environment that had become a raging inferno. The human toll of the Summerland fire was catastrophic. 50 people lost their lives that night. The victims included entire families, many of them young children on holiday. Their joyful escape turned into an unimaginable tragedy. Scores more suffered severe burns, smoke inhalation, and other injuries, leaving physical and psychological scars that would last a lifetime. The Isle of Man, a small, close-knit community, was plunged into mourning. The disaster also sent shockwaves across the United Kingdom and internationally, prompting urgent questions about the safety of such modern, large-scale public venues. Inevitably, a rigorous public inquiry was launched, chaired by Mr. Justice McKenna, tasked with meticulously examining the causes of the fire the reasons for its devastating spread, and the factors that contributed to such a high loss of life. The McKenna report, published in May 1974, delivered a scathing indictment of the design, construction, and management of Summerland. Its findings were extensive and deeply critical. The report unequivocally identified the aura glass acrylic sheeting as the primary factor in the rapid and uncontrollable spread of the fire. It noted that while Auraglass may have passed small-scale laboratory fire tests, which often do not accurately predict how a material will behave in a real, large-scale fire scenario, its inherent flammability and its tendency to melt, drip burning plastic, and rapidly propagate flame across its surface were catastrophic in this application. The inquiry found that the dangers of using such a vast quantity of this material on the facade of a major public building had not been adequately recognised or addressed during the design and approval stages. Beyond the Auraglass, the report criticised numerous other serious deficiencies. The absence of effective fire stops and cavity barriers within the building structure was highlighted, as these would have helped to compartmentalise the fire and prevent its unseen spread through voids in walls and ceilings. The building's open-plan design, while intended for aesthetic and functional reasons, was identified as a major contributor to the rapid dissemination of smoke and flames throughout the complex. The fire alarm system was deemed inadequate and its delayed activation a critical failure. The inquiry also pointed to serious shortcomings in the provision and management of escape routes, noting the locked exits and insufficient signage. Staff training in emergency procedures was found to be lacking, and there was criticism of the overall fire safety management within the complex. The report concluded that the disaster was not the result of a single failing, but rather a tragic accumulation of errors and misjudgments in design, material selection, construction, and operational safety. The Summerland disaster became a watershed moment for fire safety legislation and building regulations in the United Kingdom, and influenced standards internationally. It led to a much more stringent approach to the use of combustible materials in the construction of buildings, especially those intended for public assembly. Regulations concerning facades, cladding, and interior finishes were significantly tightened. The importance of effective fire compartmentation was re-emphasised, with new requirements for fire-resistant barriers to prevent the rapid spread of fire and smoke. There was a renewed focus on the design and maintenance of escape routes, the provision of reliable and effective fire detection and alarm systems, and the mandatory training of staff in emergency procedures. The tragedy brutally exposed the limitations of existing regulations and the often underestimated risks associated with new building materials and innovative architectural designs when fire safety is not given overriding priority. The charred, skeletal ruins of Summerland stood as a stark and grim landmark on the Douglas Promenade for many years, a constant reminder of the lives lost and the lessons learned before the site was eventually cleared and redeveloped. For the survivors, the bereaved families, and the entire community of the Isle of Man, the memory of that dreadful August night in 1973 remains an indelible and painful scar. The Summerland fire serves as a profoundly disturbing testament to how a confluence of design flaws, dangerous material choices, regulatory oversights, and failures in safety management can converge to create a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions, turning a place designed for pleasure and escape into a scene of devastating loss. It highlights the unending responsibility to prioritise human safety above all other considerations in the built environment.